I'll start back with the lighting of the candle.
Right.
So typically on the first day of Kwanzaa, we light the first candle based on the first principle of Kwanzaa, which is UMOJA. And the first principle of Kwanzaa represents unity.
Yes.
Well, this is a wonderful time to just celebrate Kwanzaa and to talk about Kwanzaa and to talk about, you know, our experiences with Kwanzaa. And so, you know, we've invited all of our family, we're family and friends and all of such, you know, just to kind of just talk about the experiences that we've had with Kwanzaa, the experience we're having today, which is already wonderful. I'm feeling real full right now with excitement and joy. So let's talk about Kwanzaa, and let's just talk about your experiences in the past with Kwanzaa. So whoever wants to start.
So my past experiences with Kwanzaa, I think I started maybe, it was later in life, post-military as a matter of fact. So I think 2008 was the first time that I actually celebrated Kwanzaa by going through the lighting of the candles each day in my home, you know, and reflecting on the various principles. I've actually had some opportunities right here at this church to celebrate Kwanzaa with you. And it's something that I would like to get back to. You know, it hasn't been a consistent practice in my life. And so as a grandmother now, it's important for me to make sure that I am teaching, and not only teaching, but modeling the way of living out these principles, which is not to me just to be boxed in on those 7 days, but throughout the year. Yes.
Yeah.
So as you know, Kwanzaa is not a Nigerian or African holiday. And I've been here for about 40-something years. And when the conversation started to become very popular in New York, I was one of the first people to say, cool what?
Yeah.
You know, because it's not, even though they say it's Swahili, it's really not Swahili. It's something that was made up. But then I believe I sat down with Mr. Curtis, who's a Liberian senator from Nigeria, Liberia, but in Staten Island. He was running for senator in those days, and I owned a restaurant, an African restaurant. And they used to have their meetings there. And then they decided to start having me cater the food for all these Kwanzaa celebrations that I didn't understand. So of course I had to go and study. And I remember that I sat with Mr. Curtis and a group from Staten Island College in Staten Island, and they went through how they came up with the different days and what it represented and all that. And I was very proud because I'm like, whoa. If you look at each aspect of each day, it stands for principles and values that old Africans had. Unity, where everybody's your family, you know? And of course the nuclear family is important, but we never used to lock our doors in the olden days, you know? And then you look at the table and it's filled with fruits. We have harvest in Nigeria. So they took a bit of everything that is African, and they were able to create this amazing thing, piece of history that now embodies values and principles. Now, can we live with those? Can we actually embody it?
Yeah.
That's the challenge. Who wants to go there?
I will. So, again, as Moji said, in Trinidad, this is not part of what we've done. But several years ago, many years ago, I was learning more about living in America and living as a Black person in America, even though I was not treated like the typical Black person. So I had some challenges, but then I thought, well, this sounds really good. And I had the family come together and we decided to do Kwanzaa. And we invited extended family, and I did the research. And it was such a powerful time. And we had people from several generations in the room, and then that was the last time the family had it until I started coming to Resurrection, and then I attended some of the Kwanzaa. And pretty much like you said, I have grandchildren and children now, and these principles, they're not new, they will outlast us.
Yes.
They're everlasting principles, and it needs to start from within us individually and within the homes. And I'm looking so forward this year, starting it with my family.
So I've never celebrated Kwanzaa, ever. And it was interesting when I moved to the States, this was early 90s, I was caught at an intersection where my white colleagues thought I was the expert on Kwanzaa. And I literally had no clue what the holiday entailed. I didn't particularly feel included by African Americans in celebrating Kwanzaa, but that actually was not really the major issue for me. I think the major issue for me was that I had gotten to a point in my journey, for a number of reasons, where it didn't really matter what the holiday was. But I no longer was a believer in celebrating a principle, be it, Christmas, whatever, Kwanzaa, on a particular day or a particular week. What do we do when that week is done? Do we go back to business as usual? And I must say, I was disillusioned, I was disillusioned with the commercialization of holidays and the hypocrisy that it tended to drive. So I'm glad we're having this conversation today, because when you think and when you look at the principles that Kwanzaa is built around, of course they make sense. Now the question is, are we just going to talk about them, or are we actually going to accept them? Right?
Yes. Now, my experience is, it was Reverend Carolyn Mobley, who's actually one of our elders in MCC, who invited me to her home with her wife Adrian Bowie, and that's when my wife and I, Joanne, were first really introduced to Kwanzaa. We had heard of it, was like you said, because of commercialization, but we never knew what it was. And so that's one of the things that I hear is consistent, is that very few of us actually experience Kwanzaa in the home. We tend to experience it in the community. And so we went to their home, and so it was the first time I was really introduced to it. And so every year we celebrated it with a small group of people. And as I had mentioned earlier, it was much later that we began to celebrate Kwanzaa at the actual church, and so that everybody could participate. And so it's really good that we're having this conversation about it, because the relativeness of Kwanzaa is something that we want to talk about. We understand that these principles are timeless, that Kwanzaa is centered around. The question is, how do we live those principles in the way that our world exists today?
Exactly.
I mean, all of us are very passionate people who care about our families, we care about our neighbors, we care about our world around us. And so how do these principles stand up today? So let's move into that conversation. Let's start with the first principle, which is the principle of UMOJA, which is unity, to strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and the race. So how relevant is this principle today, given where our society and our culture is? How relevant is it today, unity?
Unity is always relevant. I don't care what's going on in the world, unity is always relevant. It is something that we should always try to ascertain, something that we should always try to envelop or model. We're not an island to ourselves. We have to be united. I don't think that we can even live or thrive. Think about a baby when they're born. If you don't take and, show love to that baby, feel them, hold them, it's like a disconnect. And that's the way I think about society. No matter with all the wars, there's so many things going on right now till you can hardly keep up with it. But how, in the midst of all the turmoil, do we create a space where we can unite people when it seems like it is so divisive? We're divisive even in the country. You have to be on this side or that side. It's no gray anymore. It's either you to the left or you to the right. It's like, no, but there is so much in between that we miss out on. So many things that unite us than things that divide us, whether we want to admit it or not. So it's always relevant, in my opinion. Always unity. That's just my little take on it.
Honestly, personally, I think unity is missing
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of homes,
Oh.
in a lot of families,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of churches and mosques and across the globe. And when I think about unity, I'm not even thinking about the outside world. I'm thinking about the people I can touch,
Right.
you know? And when you look at the old African way of being,
Mm-hmm.
people were your family. If you stopped at my house and you said you're hungry, I would feed you. I didn't need to know who you are.
That's true.
My father put so many people through school, same as your dad. That's what unity looks like to me. It doesn't have, you don't have to be my family to help you. You don't have to be somebody I know to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in 2023, we talk a lot about DEI, inclusion and diversity,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we forget that there cannot be diversity without inclusion,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right? Inclusion is how we are all sitting here.
Yeah.
Different races, different people, different beliefs. You are just as authentic to your beliefs as I am to mine. Committed, I should say. I hate that word, but I'll use it for now.
Right.
You're committed to your beliefs and I'm committed to mine, but we have a common ground.
Mm-hmm.
You're human, I'm human. You're black, I'm black. Well, most people don't use that word anymore. African American and so am I. But then when we start to focus on what separates us as opposed to what connects us, it becomes harder to be unified. If I can look at you as a human being first, that's why my hashtag is humanity first. It doesn't matter if you're green, black, whatever you are, straight, gay. If I can see the humanity in you first, right, then it becomes easier for me to include you. And that's how we create diversity.
That's true. That's true.
So unity, UMOJA is very important.
I think it's very relevant. It remains relevant across time. And as we go through lots of self-help and so forth, it begins with us. It begins with us looking within ourselves and getting ourselves together. And then within the home, my mom would say that charity begins at home and it ends abroad.
Right.
So that unity, Moji, as you alluded to, the fact that we're not unified. We've seen families that are not together. I'm working on issues with our family. I think everybody is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's a real thing. And we could still be unified and agree to disagree on some things. This is a conversation I have with my children and with my family, and I think as we begin one family at a time, one person at a time, we could begin to create a change in our culture,
Sure.
in our nation, and globally.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with, everyone's comments around this. I would say unity is a critical value. I would say unity and to what end? Because we could all be united around a criminal activity.
Yeah, true.
That's
true.
not what we're
That's,
talking
yeah,
about.
right.
So unity aligned towards a meaningful common purpose, I think, is one. The second thing, and this is basically because, Moji and I, we're caught at the multiple intersections. We could dice this so deep, in terms of the multiple groups, right? I honestly think that in striving towards unity, we cannot and should not do that by excluding others. or by creating an environment that is not welcoming to others.
That's true.
So I think that's the second challenge. And then the third is the point you touched on. And I see this as part of the problem we see with families, countries, the school system.
Yeah.
Unity does not necessarily always feel warm and fuzzy.
That's true.
Unity should allow for us to disagree. Unity should allow for different voices, conflicting opinions. And sometimes I worry that when we think about the, unity in the home, unity in the family, unity in the church, everyone's thinking that everybody should, it's a kumbaya thing. It is, that if it is a kumbaya thing, then I think we're getting unity wrong.
And I think, and what I'm hearing too is that we have to start with the common ground, and understand why, and understand not only the importance of unity, but the fact that we all are responsible to help with that unity. It's gotta be each person's priority.
Yeah.
We don't have to necessarily agree, but we need to understand why we are together and what it is that we're hoping to accomplish.
And what we're doing right now, the open dialogue and communication, is a part of uniting us.
Exactly.